Hi, friends. Another day, another live. Really proud of myself for going live so much lately. I've just had the time to set aside to sort of come on here and get to know you all more and answer questions and, share what I have going on in my life, talk about some hot topics. I do have TikTok on the line with me. And on the TikTok end, we've been getting into a lot of stuff about what's going on TikTok lately, in terms of some of the communities that I'm involved, sort of involved in on TikTok. Um, but I never know what we're gonna get up to when I go live. I never know what we're gonna end up talking about. It just sort of depends who comes in and what people are feeling at the time. So usually when I go live, just in case you're new here, I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. And I'm also a survivor of abuse in a queer relationship. So typically that's what we talk about. Typically we talk about things surrounding abuse. But that said, anything is fair game. I'm very open. I have a lot of other things that I like to talk about, like travel and being a single mom and co-parenting and all of that fun stuff. So feel free to ask me anything. Sometimes people will ask me really random questions, and that ends up being the most fun. The other day, we ended a live talking about what we collected as children, which I thought was a really fun way to end it. Um, so feel free to ask me anything before we dive in, or before I just start like blabbing away about abuse. Got to do my spiel. Like I said, I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. I offer one-on-one coaching. You can go to my website, lindsaygoodman.com, to find that information. I have several different options for you. And also, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Lindsay Goodman Coaching is my new specific trauma recovery account. I did have it blended with like my day-to-day life stuff, and I decided to go ahead and separate the two so that there was more clarity on what people can expect from me where. So feel free to follow me on either one. I'm the Lindsay Goodman on the Lindsay Goodman is like sort of like who am I, travel, you know, the healing version of me. And the Lindsay Goodman Coaching is going to be just abuse related stuff. So feel free to follow me over there. And the reason I'm saying that is because like I said, I'm also on TikTok, and I don't know what's going on with TikTok. So if you want to keep in touch with me and you want to still be a part of my communities and what I have going on, and just in case something happens with TikTok, you can always go to my website and, find me. You can find all my places over there. So just putting that out there before we begin. But all of that said, the floor is yours. Ask me anything. I love watching you and listening to what you have to say. Thank you so much. Thanks for being here. And also, it's nice to see people in here since I've just been in here hanging out the last couple of days. It's been a weird week. Usually I don't have as much time to go live as much as I have lately. Also, I've been a little bit more motivated to go live just because, again, some of the things that have been going on TikTok, and just coming in here, hanging out with people and trying to heal collectively and process things collectively. But it's been nice. It's been really fun coming to hang out, and we've been talking about a lot of good stuff. So you just miss me, don't lie. Yeah, instead of like FaceTiming you or just texting you, I come on lives just so you can come in and hang out. Welcome in, Kat. I'm glad you're here. Hi, Kels. Welcome in. What are your experiences with Grey Rock methods? Okay, so before we start talking about Grey Rock, first and foremost, I want to say that this is only something that we can try to do if the other person is not physically aggressive or volatile. If the other person is physically aggressive or volatile, we want to be very careful about our behavior around them. And we do kind of want to act. We want to be secretly planning our escape and planning what we need to do without letting them know that's what we're doing, because it can be very dangerous if all of a sudden your behavior changes. It can piss them off, which I did Grey Rock and it did work for me. And later on, I realized that it could have been very dangerous because my abuser is physically aggressive. And I'm very lucky that nothing happened with that. But basically, if you don't know what Grey Rocking is, it's when you turn yourself into a rock. You become very boring. You don't really, you're not really involved in conversations. You're not really doing anything that they could possibly respond to. So, for example, like my abuser would come home and I started gray rocking and they would start talking to me. Like it could just be about their day. But at this point, I'm trying to create emotional distance. I'm trying to separate myself from them and trying to decrease their access to me, even though we live together. So they would be talking and I would just like, I would be doing the dishes or something. And I would just like, I would be actively listening just because you have to be on your toes, obviously. And I would say things like, wow, yeah, that must have been really hard. But not asking questions and um not taunting, not seeming bored, not getting involved. And if they would say something like I can remember them like texting me and like throwing fits about like their feelings about my son and his dad and all that stuff. And it'd be like a whole paragraph, like, this isn't fair, blah, blah, blah. And I would say things like, yeah, that must be really hard for you. Like validate them, which sounds really weird. And actually there's gray rocking and yellow rocking. So what I'm talking about might be yellow rocking. It's kind of like I think it's yellow rocking. You're not gray rocking. It's like kind of somewhere in the middle. But the whole point is that you become boring. You become dull. You give them nothing. Um, and so, of course you have to be very careful not to have a quote unquote attitude. You can't you can't say or do anything that's going to cause a reaction in them. What you really want them to do is come up to you and be like, I'm not getting anything out of this one. And then they leave you alone, and you're preventing yourself from getting into one of those circular 5-10 hour long arguments. So yeah, you're just becoming boring. It did work for me. It did work. It did help. Um, they would pursue, and I would just, again, yes, I hear you. I understand. Okay, thanks for telling me. Things like that. But again, monitoring your tone like crazy, because if you're like, all right, I get it, that's not great rocking. That's, you know, falling into their little trap. So thank you for asking. I hope that helps a little bit to clarify or to know what my experience was. I knew it. Yep. Having a mom that's a narcissist, how do I get over the feeling of, oh, what is wrong with me? I think that, I don't have a narcissistic parent, but I did experience childhood emotional neglect, and I just had to realize that this was my parents' problem. And my parents are, I really, really, really highly recommend the book, Running on Empty, Therapy Right. If you can find a good therapist. You know me, I'm a little bit about therapists, but right. The book called Running on Empty by Dr. Jonice Webb. I highly recommend that because she talks about childhood emotional neglect. And one of the ways that she gives like 9 examples of types of parents in which, this can happen. And narcissistic parent is one of them, like narcissistic or abusive parent is one of them. And, the one that I experienced is what was like well-meaning parents, but traumatized themselves. And so essentially, like in my case, it's like, well, my parents weren't bad. It's not their fault. They're not horrible, whatever. But this was something that they did or didn't do with me. And it's not me. I am loved. It's not something that like was wrong with me as a person. And so, this is fine. Obviously, when you have an abusive parent, it's much more complex than that because uh, they actually are bad. They actually are harming you on purpose. And so even still, though, I feel like learning to understand the reality of it and what it is and why. And also, I think understanding like generational trauma, like your parents are narcissists because of their upbringing. I think they say it's a lot of upbringing, like environment, but also can be somewhat genetic. At least the last that I researched, that's what it said. And so, like, we're all coming down with like this like stack of absolute crap that we're born into and that we have to deal with. So, like, for me, both of my parents were well-meaning, but couldn't hit the mark even a little bit. And then their parents, same thing, well-meaning, but didn't have the education. It was during a war or the Great Depression or whatever. My dad especially is old, was old. He passed away when I was 21, 20. I wish 21. It's been 21 years. But then, like their parents and the parents before them, like, unless you came from like, no, even then, I was going to say, unless you come from like money and all that stuff, but then like someone else is raising you. and, whatever. But like, we come from generations of like immigrants and people who didn't have money and had too many kids, too many mouths to feed, too much stress, too much like, abuse for in their own lives being swept under the rug. And that is just handed down, handed down, handed down. And so being able to learn and understand that, like, it's not about me. It's not my fault. There's not something wrong with me. I mean, there's something wrong with all of us, right? Like, we all have trauma. We all have pain. We all have struggles. But is it really something wrong? We didn't ask for this. It's not a fault, a flaw in our own, like, we just weren't born bad or wrong or stupid or incapable or whatever the hell message that we have received, right? And so, again, I highly recommend that book. And yes, coaching or therapy, if you can do that and you can afford that, and you can find a coach who's willing to walk through that with you and come up with ways for you to work through that on your own and things like that, I think would be very beneficial. Again, that book is Dr. Joni's Web, Dr. Joni's Web. I spelled it wrong. That's okay. Running on Empty. I very, very much recommend that book. Running on Empty. We aren't to blame for our parents' actions, even if they tell us so. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And that's another thing. So a lot of y'all have had abusive parents, narcissistic parents, and so you were 100% told that, right? Then we also have parents who, again, had the whole childhood emotional neglect thing where they weren't like, they're not narcissists, they're not outright abusive, but like, for example, my mom has so much trauma and she's so hurt that she doesn't have a lot to give emotionally to people, right? We had emotionally unavailable parents and or emotionally immature parents. And so they would guilt us, like covertly, like, oh my God, I have to do this for you again. Or, oh my God, you're always this, you're always that. And they would guilt us. And again, they weren't outright abusive, but their behaviors damaged us very much, or their passive aggression and all of that stuff. So again, we're not responsible for that. And we're also not responsible for their lack of emotional intelligence or for their trauma or for whatever happened to them to make them that way, right? And in some cases, again, like mine, it's very much like accepting what happened and why. And like for me, like loving my mom for who she is and knowing that like this wasn't her fault either. Again, when you have an abusive parent, it's being able to have that separation of, I didn't ask for this. This is what I got. This is really unfortunate. And also knowing that, like, I'm going to say something that's a little bit yucky, is that like your moms who are abusive are that way for a reason. And that does not excuse their behavior in the slightest. It is horrible. It is not acceptable. But when you can understand, like why did I end up with a narcissistic mom? Because she was probably abused and neglected and all that stuff as a child too. Again, does not for 1 second make it okay. It doesn't make it okay that my parents emotionally neglected me, even though they didn't even mean to, right? It's not okay. It's not okay, but they didn't have the information to be able to do anything differently. But I think a lot of times understanding that our parents went through a lot and they didn't have tools to raise us, I think is very helpful. I had to go no contact in order to realize it wasn't me. I couldn't do it with her in my life. Yeah, because you're constantly getting that message of, this is your fault. How did I end up with a kid like this? Okay, I'm not going to say anymore because I don't want to trigger you guys, but like all this crap messages that they're sending you, and Kat is 100% right. And it's the same thing with an abusive relationship, because I had all these messages from my abuser. I was a bad mom. I was a bad person. I couldn't take care of myself. All of these things, they're constantly in your face, whether they're saying them or showing you through their behavior or they're sighing or they're whatever. It's constant. And so to go no contact with that person, which by the way is what I'm talking about this week on the podcast and on Instagram, on Lindsay Goodman Coaching on Instagram, going no contact helps clear your mind. It helps raise the fog. It helps you to be able to see things for what they are. And when that message isn't constantly in your brain, yes, you're still going to have to retrain your brain to not think like that, because typically when we've heard that message for so long, we continue to abuse ourselves for the person who's been doing it. We continue to, our messages are going down that pathway, and you still have to do the work after mom or ex-partner, whoever is out of your life and blocked and no contact and all that stuff. you still have to do the work to retrain your brain. Otherwise, you're still going to like, when you mess up, you're still going to say, oh my gosh, I'm so dumb and I'm incapable of doing anything, blah, 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 because that's what your mom's been saying or whatever. You still have to do the work. You still have to retrain your brain and create new pathways. But you're going to be so much more able to see what's really going on here. We think you're a good person. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Generational trauma that trained the later generations is what is shaking us awake by us confronting the fact that our sick society has been built by traumatizing throughout history. 100%. And you know what? I'm a history lover, and my favorite time to study is like 1500s England. And I read these books, like I read both like historic fiction from that time period, and I also read I will read like a thick book about one person's life, and it'll be like 5 pages of like what the queen wore when she came out for her coronation, and I'm like, oh my god, okay, so she had sleeves of this with cloth of gold, blah blah blah, diamonds sewn into, like all that stuff. Like I'm sitting here just like eating it up because I'm a history nerd. My dad was actually a history teacher, so I grew up like, who was the Civil War general that ran the battle of like whatever, like I just know all these random facts. I know. And I'm sitting here reading it, and I'm like, my God, the trauma, the absolute trauma. And this is like 500 years ago, right? It's always been this way. It's always been trauma and horrific, like whatever. And now it's better. Like now we're not beheading people in the square. And now we're not, some of the things that those people went through, horrible, right? But we're still going through stuff, and we're still carrying our trauma, our parents, our grandparents, sometimes our siblings, like great grandparents. We're carrying so much, and it's not working. It has never worked. It's just you either get successful about like pretending it's not there and walking around going through life like you're pretending you're okay, or you're struggling like bad and it's like visible. So yes, it's very hard. Kat, what are you doing? You come and go like, I was going to try to come up with something funny, but I couldn't think of anything that comes and goes a lot. Getting distracted by what? What's going on? What am I missing? You ready for another question? Yes. My attention span is 0 today. That's okay. Y'all don't all have to sit here and watch me talk forever, okay? Especially Kat, you're like always in my lives, so I don't expect you to just like, yeah. Ooh, I'm stimming. Yep. It's funny because for the longest time I would only go live on TikTok or Instagram, and so like I could do weird things with my hands and find textures and find things to entertain me, and nobody would know. But the wide angle lens thing on my computer, you can see everything I'm doing, and I'm stimming because I like the way this feels. I'm sorry. Why are you sorry? Don't apologize. That's literally what I'm here for. That's why I'm here. You can ask me anything or tell me anything while I'm here. That's cool. If I don't like it, I'll say I don't like it. Like if it's like disrespectful, but it's usually just like trolls that say things that I don't like. Exactly. So we are healing as a society and reaching a point that we want a solution, a real solution, because we see through history once more medicating has caused addiction and even more issues for the later generations. We reach a point of understanding and wanting to get to the root of the issue. Exactly. And yes, and we're seeing it. We're seeing all the problems. We're seeing like all the things on the news. And we're like, okay, yeah, this is a massive problem. We need like whole change as a society. And, you know, the older generations are like, man, it never used to be like this. And it's like, yeah, because you were like beaten if you had an opinion, and you were like not allowed to have feelings, especially men, of course. And women, you just had to like you didn't have time because you had to take care of the farm and your 14 kids and all that stuff. So you didn't have time to be sad that your parent passed away, or that like, I don't know, your husband cheated on you or whatever. You just weren't allowed to have horrible. And we're like, y'all, we don't want to do this. Why are we doing this? We don't want to pass this down. We're hoping for a better world for our kids. And here we are like, My favorite thing is we don't live in granddad's world no more. That's right. 100%. When you can't go no contact kids with a toxic ex, what is the best course of action for engaging? Third party app, Our Family Wizard. You have kids? I didn't know you had kids. Our Family Wizard. Block them on every single other thing. Only talk through there. And only talk when it's 100% about the kids. I have 2 little angel babies. I did not know that. Thank you for sharing that with me. I did not know that. You'll get yeeted if it's disrespectful. 2 and 4. I did not know that. It's weird. I'm like, my brain did not. Maybe you never shared that. I don't know. Hey, happy to see you on here. Hi, welcome back in. Yeah, a couple people in here that have been hanging out lately because I've actually been hanging out lately. So it's nice to see people more often. It's nice to be like we're having some continuity in our conversations because we're like, yesterday we talked about this, yesterday we talked about that. Charge my phone a little bit. Okay. So anyway, as I was saying, I hope that's helpful so far. But yes, you use a third-party app. You only go through that. It's all like everything is like documented in there. So what that does is like reduce the amount of manipulation and everything like that. Because as far as I know, it's all just like stored in there, and you can't like, a lot of times with like texting, like seriously, never ever ever answer the phone unless it's actually an emergency, like your kids are going to the hospital or something like that. Phone calls, even voice memos that like, you used to have to like save them and stuff like that because they can just say that they never said that never happened. But you just want to make sure that you're doing all the no contact steps except for providing for if there's an emergency with your kids. So you can do the same. A lot of people, I'm not saying you're doing this and it's not anyone's fault that they do this, but a lot of people will say, well, I have a kid, so I can't go no contact. And I'm like, that's a myth. You can absolutely strip them of their access to you, except for when 100% necessary. And the more that we put our foot down with those hard, fast boundaries, the more they're going to realize that they're not getting anywhere with you. I feel weird having missed yesterday. Yesterday was a good one. And actually, right before we left, someone ended up asking me about the drama, and I answered. And they were not expecting me to give the answer I gave. They just wanted like my opinion. And I was like, well, my opinion is that I have 100% had experience with that person. So here it is. And they were like, what? I no longer open my mouth at all. Yeah. I mean, that's the smart thing. To do. I missed yesterday too. Oh no. Well, welcome in. I missed the tea. Kat, you know all the tea. You have literally been, not that I don't know it anyway. You know all the tea. You are ahead of the game. You know more than me, I'm sure. So today's definitely quieter though. The last couple of days I've had a lot of people in here. I noticed that when I labeled my chat problematic creators ? It was drawing in some crowds. It was drawing all the lesbians in. Or TikTok was like, here's some tea, everybody have it. But today I changed it back because I don't want to be dramatic. I don't know. Do we have any updates, Kat? Chase the clout. Yeah, you know what? So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to make my own video about my own experience, because part of me was like, I should probably do my own video and share this in solidarity with the other women who came forward, because I want to support them. I want them to be believed. I want to contribute um, to their support uh, as survivors and things like that. Especially just because like this person is like a menace to our community. But then I was like, no, because I don't want to do that and then have more people come to my page and have more people like whatever, because it's not about me. I'm fine. And two, that's very much, it can be a thing, right? Where people want to weigh in. Like you see people who want to come in and they want to share the news. So they're doing like, oh, this is the update in the situation, blah, blah, blah. And it brings in a lot of attention. And that's not really what I want to do. Like I don't want to be a creator who's bringing in drama, except when I talk about really controversial things, like that shouldn't be controversial, like some of the videos that I've talked about, some of the quote unquote parenting choices that my abuser wanted to make for my child, people were up in a rage about that. Mutual abuse, people get up in a rage about that. And that brings in a lot of arguments, which it really shouldn't. It 100% should not be something that is controversial. I've seen so many new videos from people not involved today. Yeah. I did like the one you sent me yesterday, though. That one was funny. How did you communicate with your son about the split? My 4-year-old is asking questions. Okay, so this is a very good question. It's very hard when you are ending a relationship and you have kids who are big enough to understand that changes are being made. And of course, my situation is a little bit different because we are fleeing this person, and this person is not your legal or biological parent. This person does not get any more access to you, and it was hard and fast. Whereas with you, it's like, you know, well, wait, okay, I'm gonna ask a question. Did you have the kids with your wife, or did you have them before? If you believe you're doing the right thing by your kids, then fuck what your abuser or anyone else has to say. Yes, thank you so much for saying that. It's pretty wild. So, the long story short on that is that I talked about, and I talk about this a fair amount, is that my abuser came along, and people wanted to attack me for even like letting this person into my life, and a lot of people assumed it was a man, so they're like, oh my god, you let this person come in and blah 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 with your kid for like a hookup or whatever. And I was like, well, actually, like, this is someone that I knew from the gym for a long time and I thought was safe because we had mutual friends, and like they came in under the guise of like wanting to help me out, blah blah blah. This is how abuse works, y'all. They come in, they're acting like there's one way and they're a completely other way. And so after I figured out what was happening, way after, they manipulated me into stopping breastfeeding and co-sleeping with my son. A lot, breastfeeding and co-sleeping, for some reason, those things are massively controversial in America, in the United States. And so my comment sections were full of people being like, well, they actually did you a favor, and well, actually they did a good job, and actually, blah 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 blah. But in reality is, when you're a parent, follow your instinct. It's your child, you know what's best for them, and absolutely, and nobody should be making decisions for your child. I think another person came forward. We're like well into the 20s now. I think the videos you have been doing have been perfect. Thank you. Yeah, it was definitely like, Kat, it was like there was a day or two that I was like, I don't really know what the right thing to do is. I didn't feel right to say nothing at all. And I've offered my support in the comments and things like that, but I had to find a way that made sense for me and my page and what I stand for. And not just be like, okay, here's my tea, because I can't. And the ones who did do that, I fully support it. The ones who gave their tea, fully support it. I'm new to your page. I'm a survivor of childhood abuse and 2 domestic violence relationships. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you for saying that, because a A lot of people don't realize that when you grow up, experience childhood abuse or childhood emotional neglect, you grow up and will probably have a string of unsuccessful relationships. And the unfortunate thing is that society then views you as the problem. If you've had more than one, even if you've only had one and you come out and you're like, that was really bad. Like, I tried to break up with them and they like pushed me up against the wall. I like wasn't expecting that. Anyway, I got away and moved on, whatever. So it's like not that bad. It's bad. Shouldn't have happened. But I'm saying, like, in the grand scheme of things, people will be like, yeah, wow, you dodged a bullet, right? One time, then you're off scot-free. They're like, yeah, good thing you dodged that bullet. But if you had an abusive relationship and you're telling people, like, even just one, they're looking at you like you chose wrong, you messed up, you whatever. If you come out and God forbid you've had more than one, whether abusive or toxic, it's your fault. And that's not true at all. It's because of our upbringing. It's because we were raised to think that this was normal, that someone that you're talking to in that moment and being vulnerable with can walk away from you and say, I'm done with you, and slam the door or leave the house, not talk to you for the whole entire day, or passive aggressively storm around the house, slamming things around, blah, 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 intimidating you, threatening you, all that stuff, calling you names, because that's how it was with our parents. We saw our parents do that to each other. We saw our parents do that to us. So it was totally normal. So to have more than one shitty relationship when you come from that upbringing, and also can happen if you had a really amazing upbringing. So it can happen to anybody. It's very vulnerable to be able to say that, because again, society looks at you like you're the problem, and fuck that. I respect that you create a very safe space. Thank you so much. That is my goal. And it feels really weird to say that now, because someone who's being called out was creating a safe space. Although I think a lot of people did pick up that wasn't necessarily what it was, but it feels really weird right now to be like, I'm a safe space and I'm an ally for this and that, and I'm queer and I'm this and that, because I'm like, although to be fair, I was doing that before she was. Petty. Okay. You're safe here. Yes. Thanks, Kat. Yeah, she carried both babies. Okay, I just wanted to double check on that and make sure that it wasn't like, no, these are mine, whatever. But so I ended up when so I left for 3 months and we didn't really talk about anything. Like we're on vacation and my son was used to traveling alone with me and stuff like that. And spending more time with me and being away from my abuser and also his dad. And so because I was his safe person, everything was fine. He didn't really ask a lot of questions. But when we were getting ready to come back, I was like, I'm going to have to break this to him. And what do I do? And so I put a call out on my Instagram, and two sort of like child development specialists, like type, I don't know what their title is, but like counselor type things, gave me a couple of options. They were pretty much the same, but like a little bit of variation. And I basically like talked about how, I mean, my situation's a little different because your kids are still going to see the other person. But we talked about how that person wasn't safe for us to be around. I explained that like we want to be around people who are safe for our bodies and our minds, and that we feel good around and safe around, and that this person unfortunately was unable to do that with us. And so we're not going to see them anymore. But with you, because the other person has access to the kids can tell her, this is what mom or mommy or mama or whatever you guys call each other, I don't know, this is what the other parent said. You have to be very careful, of course, not to say anything that they're going to ask the other parent or get anxiety about the other parent. Like your kids will figure out, if they have an abusive parent, they will figure it out. And then you have to start learning how to support them through that and everything like that. But honestly, that's a really tough one. And I don't have that exact experience. So just saying things like, yeah, we lived together for how many years, but unfortunately, because your kid is 4, they can understand like feelings and emotions and like getting along well with others. And you can say things like, how like if you're on the playground and somebody's really mean to you, you don't want to play with them, right? Yeah, well, you can say things like, well, unfortunately, living in the same house, we weren't able to get along well together. So we're going to live in separate houses so that we can all feel happier and safer, or something like that. It's not like narcissists wear a sign to let you know. Absolutely they don't. It'd be much easier if they did. Yeah, for some reason society thinks that they do, because they're like, you chose wrong. You should choose better. And it's like, that person didn't come up to me and say, like, here's my abuse resume. Are you interested? Keep reading. There's more. Gets worse. Just keep going. All right, great. Let's go. No. My last relationship ended 10 months ago and fought every day since to have my story heard. We hear you. Share whatever you want to share here. I've got some more time. That is what we do in here. This is what we talk about. This is a safe space. So if you feel like nobody's hearing you, yes, Kat was already on it. We are here. I came out of one abusive relationship and 6 months later ended up in another one. Also, really want to validate you with that because that's also very common. And that was one of the, I want to say this, but I don't want to make you feel dumb or bad because I did something that you didn't. I'll share another story that will help you. That's one of the reasons that I was like, I cannot date because you are so vulnerable. And it's very common for people to see that in you, for abusive people to see that and see you and make that move. And you sort of run to them because they're fake and they're comforting at first. They're offering you everything that that person didn't up front. And they're tricking you into thinking that it's going to be a healthy, mutual, loving relationship, right? So it's not your fault. It took me, I'm 30, I'm going to be 36 in August. It took me this relationship that was so horrible to finally be like, I'm not dating until I do some work, until I mean, honestly, I still have no interest in that. But I had other relationships like that in the past, right? Now to turn around and validate you again, to make sure that you don't feel like I was like, I'm better than you because I did this and you didn't. I once had a very sweet, very loving, safe, communicating, beautiful partner. And I broke up with him because it was too good. If anyone wants to just unfollow me right now because that was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life. Again, now, if you don't know me, I am queer. So at some point we would have had to cross that bridge. This was when I was like 20 something, but I left that relationship. Started I was like on my internship in college and was just like hanging out with like people who like whatever. Ended up living with a super abusive, toxic dude for like a year. Started drinking a lot, was miserable. I was isolated. He controlled like my every move. And so that's what we do. We jump out of the frying pan into the fire sometimes, like because we don't know any better. And again, because these people wear masks when we meet them, they're not coming at us with a resume. They're not. So yes, that is very common, unfortunately. Hope everyone is doing okay this evening. Thank you so much. I hope you are too. Yeah, your page has a completely different feeling to it than the other. Yes, thank you so much. I do. I want mine. Like, again, I used to do the validating stuff and I meant it with all my heart because that was what I was experiencing at the time. I was struggling with my queer identity. I was being abused with my queer identity. And I knew that there were other people like me out there. So that's what I was doing. And I meant it with all my heart. But I want my content to be, sometimes it's funny, not funny, like funny, what is the thing? Funny, not funny, funny, what is it? Funny, weird or something like that. I don't know. I don't remember the audio, but like that, like where I'll use a funny audio to talk about something that's like not so nice. But I want it to be like genuine and authentic and validating and real and not just like, obviously, I don't get a lot of views on TikTok anymore. And actually, Facebook has been really slow lately. Facebook. The thing about social media is that it ebbs and flows. It ebbs and flows. It's not a big deal. My hope is that like my core audience who needs to see it, even if it's 100 people or 50 people, see what they need to see. And that's what really matters to me. But, I never want to. In fact, I get very uncomfortable if I feel like I would need to make a piece of content because that's what's popular, that's what's trendy. Sometimes I will jump on a trend on TikTok because I get creative with it, but I don't want to feel performative. That feels so yucky to me. I think because as a survivor and having dealt with so many people who are performative and wear masks and all that stuff, that to me is so repulsive. So repulsive. And I can't imagine like that being something that you do day in, day out. But of course, we are two very different people. Both were emotionally and physically abusive, but my last boyfriend put me in the hospital twice. I am so sorry. That's not okay. I know that you know that. Nobody should ever have to go through that once, let alone twice. My ex put such a bad taste in my mouth about dating. It's so nice being single. It really is. It's very nice. Hey, neighbor. Hi. Welcome back. Yeah, not funny. Haha, funny, weird. I have snow here in Utah. Oh my gosh. I'm not going to lie. I'm really glad it's beautiful out today. It's probably like high 50s and like sunny. It's a beautiful like P&W spring day, and we've had that for the last couple of days, and I'm very thankful, and I don't want it to get cold again, but I love snow. I'm like, my inner child comes out when it's like big fluffy snow that just like ploops onto your face. Yes, I made that word up. My kiddo and I make up the words, but I make up a lot of really weird words for him for like different actions and stuff, and that's one of them. And sometimes I accidentally say them in public, but that's funny because my dad used to like we had a lot of weird words growing up that other people wouldn't know. Um, and I do that with my son too, so that's kind of a fun thing. Where are you from? I live in Washington State. If you don't talk using TikTok sounds, are you really on TikTok? Exactly. I like to have a healthy balance. Again, I get a lot less views on my talking videos, but I think that those are important too, because you can only do and say so much on like a trending audio type thing. Those ones are great. I love them. It's my favorite to do because I kind of like acting and like being able to, I'm a sign language interpreter, so like being a different person for a second, doing all that stuff, I think is really fun. And it is a lot more boring to be like, hi, I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. Do you know what this means? Blah, blah, blah. I realize that it's a lot less like um, slot machiney, entertaining, like brain going off, like whatever, than like the fun sounds and trends and all that stuff. But those are important too. And so I like to have a balance. I hate that we as survivors are always blamed for the abuse, even though it's not our fault. Yeah, society is twisted. It's so twisted. Very, very sad. Um, but it's great. I mean, you know, it absolves the abuser. The abuser gets to keep doing it. The abuser, the uh, rapist, the stalker, the person who's embezzling funds, all that stuff. We protect them all day long, right? Oh, well, they're having a hard time at home, or oh, they this, oh, they that. But the survivor is an idiot. Survivor's dumb. Survivor made a bad choice. Survivor did this, blah blah blah, or it wasn't that bad. They're making it up. They're just playing the victim. Get over it. Yeah, it's bad. I've been blamed so much from my existence family for ruining our relationships in his life. Your ex's family? Um, yeah. Yeah. Go no contact with families if you can. I had like almost zero relationship with my ex's family. Um, Sometimes their mom would text me or like send me a bunch of dollar store junk for my kid. Um, but I wasn't close to them, but like very quickly, I just never talked to them again. Or is it called drama? Yup, exactly. I saw a lot of, thank you, Kat, for saying that. A lot of, on the survivors who came forward about this big creator who is behaving badly, has been for years. The survivors who came forward, and even the people who are creating content about it, I'm seeing a lot of people saying this was just a bad breakup. Some things should be kept private. Um, I wouldn't want to have a platform because then if you do anything wrong, everyone's going to call you out, blah, blah, blah. Just very much like guilting and, shaming the survivors who chose to come forward publicly. Let alone the survivors who are in the comments reading it, who are like, I can't come forward publicly because XYZ, because I'm uncomfortable, because I don't want to be attacked by people. I can't go through reading these comments because it's very triggering to me. And people are just out here like, you know, why are you airing your dirty laundry? That's one of the ones that makes me the most angry. Why are you airing your dirty laundry? I got that a lot when I started, talking about my relationship. Why are you airing your dirty laundry? Now, my content has changed a lot because for the first year or so, it was me giving specific examples of my specific abuser and what they did to me. And it might have felt a lot more petty to some people, or a lot more airing dirty laundry to some people, because I would, I would get, an exact thing they said to me or an exact thing they did to me. And I would say like my abuser. And now I've flipped it to become more, I'm a certified trauma recovery coach. I use things like your abuser when you tell them XYZ. And it might still be specific examples from what I experienced, but I'm trying to make it more professional and more like I've grown and I've shifted in my content, right? So I don't see that anymore about, airing your dirty laundry. But that is what happens when you say, this person did this to me. Why are you talking about this publicly? People are so uncomfortable. And I think about how, like, I was thinking the other day, so like I have had a lot of accounts in my day, but I still have my original account on Instagram that I made in like 2010 or whatever, when Instagram first came out, a long time ago. And I mostly just post about my son, so it's hyper private because it's just my baby, right? I just keep it very, very private. But it's people who actually know me or family, whatever. And I just think about how, like, if there are things that if I would share on that account, people would be so uncomfortable because they're like, why is Lindsay talking? What the hell? But when I talk about it publicly, of course, there are people who are still uncomfortable with it. They're like, ew, this girl's airing her dirty laundry. But there are people who are coming because I'm being vulnerable and because I'm being honest and because I'm being raw, and I'm talking about that our kids should be able to go to school without worrying about, we should not have to worry about if they're coming home. Like, there are people who are like, just don't talk about these things. Like, just be happy. Just be like, whatever. That we should not be fucking passing laws about transgender people and taking away their rights because they're humans too. Like, people are going to be like, okay, I think that too. But like, why are we talking about this publicly? This is uncomfortable. That we should not be raising awareness about domestic violence because why are we talking about this? We should just, it's between that couple. It's between whatever. No, it's between us and it's everybody's problem. It's everybody's problem. Ooh, I just got some feelings there. If you don't want to be talked about in a bad way, then don't do bad things. Yeah, exactly. I've had my ex keep checking my social media, so I have never publicly shared my story. That's fair. It can be very scary and they can retaliate. I was scared for a very long time that they're going to retaliate. The first 3 months or so, I was paranoid and I was constantly checking like who's viewing my website and who's viewing my stories and who's this, and blocking like accounts that I didn't know who they were and stuff like that. I was very paranoid because my abuser had my dogs for the first couple of weeks. They had all my stuff, which I took a risk of losing all that stuff anyway, because just to get away from them. Um, but after a while, I was like, they took my voice away for so long. I'm going to share this anyway. That said, I felt safe where I was. I felt like, I mean, I was still scared. I have PTSD, and I thought about this last night. For at least the first year, I was looking over my shoulder every time that I got in my car at night, every time that I, all that stuff. You have to make sure that you're safe to be able to share publicly. And you have to make sure that people aren't like reporting it back to your abuser or, all that stuff. So my abuser is blocked, but that doesn't mean that someone else, in fact, someone that they know that they met after me, and I just know this because I checked on that person's page and they go to the gym where my abuser works. And I was like, yeah, because I have a new TikTok account. It shows me who looks, and I kind of like see like, who are these people? Do I want to follow them back? Whatever. That person looked at my new TikTok account. Why? Because my abuser's still looking at my account and they're still talking about me. Otherwise, why does that person know my name? So the thing about abusive people is they don't really ever go away. And yes, 100%, it sucks. And I wish that you felt safe sharing your voice, but it becomes this moment of like, right, all victims and survivors have a choice. You can either say, screw it, I'm going to do it anyway, which is neither right nor wrong. Or you can say, you know what, I don't feel safe. I don't feel comfortable. I don't want this person seeing what I'm talking about and doing. I can't do this. And maybe I find other ways. Maybe I go on a TikTok live and that's my moment. Or maybe I have a coach that I can talk to this with. Or maybe I'm journaling or whatever. Because that's the reality of being a survivor, especially in this world where people have access to us all the time. That said, I did stop sharing my son recently because I realized that my abuser can see everything about my son, and I don't like that. And I know that they still talk about him. I know that for a fact because unfortunately someone did tell me about that, and I don't like that. And also just because people are creeps. And another thing I realized is that like literally my abuser knows exactly what I'm up to. All they have to do is get on my TikTok, get on my Twitter, all that stuff. Like they know that I air fried some vegetables. Like if they're looking, they know like everything that I'm doing because I share a lot. And at the end of the day, for me, because they don't have any power over me anymore, I don't care anymore. Like, but it did flash across my mind yesterday. It was like, damn, they know a lot about me. And I don't know anything about them because I don't keep track of them. And I don't need to and I don't want to. But like that, they don't stop watching you. They don't stop watching you or having someone else watch you. The same people who are saying that they shouldn't air their dirty laundry are the same ones that will say, why didn't they tell me when something happens? Mm-hmm. You got that right. You got that right. If I knew he wasn't checking, I'd fully share. I feel you. And unfortunately, like you said, he probably is. He probably is. Sunlight is a disinfectant. Expose that shit. Yep. Yep. It's hard though. And honestly, Kim, I don't know if this would help you. And I'm not trying to push you or make you feel like you should share, but I do have a podcast episode that's called like the people or like the reactions you'll get when you share your story or something like that. And I share like from what I've seen, like the abusive people, the victim shamers and enablers, the fellow advocates or survivors, the people who didn't know anything about it and like are now, realizing they're being abused from your story. And I go through each thing and like their reactions and how they treat you and stuff like that. It's pretty wild. There is a variety of reactions for sure. I have similar fears as an ex-cult member. That does make sense. That does make sense. So many people spy. Oh yeah, for sure. I joined TikTok with a dupe phone number so nobody could find me that way. That's a good idea. I didn't know you could do that. I mean, my new one isn't attached to a phone. I think it's attached to an email or whatever, but like it did kind of make me wonder like how that person even knows who I am, because for my abuser to say my name to where people could look me up and find my account where I'm talking about them is bold. Because you would have to fully trust that those people were so brainwashed that they wouldn't eventually see something that they were like, wait a minute, this checks out. I've seen that behavior in them. She might be telling the truth. So I'm like, I don't know how that person found me. I use my Google Voice number. That's so smart. Next time I start an account, I'm going to have you do it for me. I'm just kidding. But like also I don't know if like that person maybe just did some deep dive and like figured out who I was and then was like curious and saw my page. I don't know. But either way, yes, 100% people are watching. Which is what I used in Germany when I needed to get text codes for logging in, etc. Oh yeah. Smart. I use WhatsApp, but that's connected with your, like when I travel I use WhatsApp, but that's connected with your actual phone number, so All right. Anything else really quick? I think I'm going to pop off and take a couple minutes before I go back to work. If anyone has any like burning questions or anything, we can do that. But I've been on for an hour, so I think that's pretty good. Okay. I was recently just hacked and it's been over a year. This is why I have yet to go public. Yeah, that makes it rough too. I'll catch you later. Yeah, definitely. Thanks everyone for hanging out. And as always, thanks for having a great conversation with me. Check out the new podcast this week. It's not all rainbows. Why did I just lose it? What's it about? What's it about? Oh, it's about how any contact with an abusive person is contact. Any contact with an abusive person is going to give them an open door. So it's about no contact. If you have any questions about no contact, go check it out. Let me know what you think about it. Also, the LGBTQ support group is going to be April 15th, and Kat will be there. So if you need some support, super affordable, you get access to me. Again, Kat will be there. Come and hang out with us on April 15th. All of that is on my website, thelindsaygoodman.com. Okay, bye, friends.